For the last 60 years, the market has created products to meet every comfort and convenience of consumers. And the consumer movement has created in this process humongous volumes of waste. The industry response has been to talk about recycling as a solution, but the investment that industry put towards infrastructure was grossly inadequate. So we have the reality on the ground, which is stark and disturbing. Take plastic waste. A recent report from WWF confirms that globally, since 1950, just 9% of plastic waste has been recycled. Let's turn to India. 21 years back in 2000, India got its first set of rules, the municipal solid waste rules, which said that no recyclable waste should go to a landfill. The rules were a trigger for me to ask this question: what will it take for us to have the rules come alive on the ground? And this was the challenge that I decided to confront. So let's first understand the ecosystem, the basic ecosystem which is required for recycling. At the front end, we need segregation of waste at source, followed by collection and intensive sorting of dry waste. And through this intensive sorting, the output, the result is that you have 25 and more different categories of waste. Now each category has to be aggregated before it is compacted, and each of these different categories must then be transported to different recyclers. All this requires intensive operations. So recycling is really a very intensive operations exercise. And this is now only the front end. Let's come to the back end. The back end requires recyclers to buy the waste, which is raw material for the recycler. They need to have facilities and technologies to remanufacture or process these raw materials into products. And these products in turn must have a market so that they can come back into use. Now in India, the fundamental system, both at the front and the back end, can best be described as weak. There is a large informal sector that works diligently to offer recycling services, but they have to work in isolation, or rather they work in isolation with little or no support from other stakeholders, including industry, waste generators and the government. The focus is on livelihood rather than on the environment or even their own health and safety. They work with mixed waste, materials are sorted in the open, heavy materials are moved manually. Packaging waste today makes up a large quantum of the waste that they work with, and this waste, which is low grade, very often does not get purchased by recyclers at appropriate prices. So often this large quantum of waste remains unaccounted, and this is the waste that comes as litter, is dumped or burnt. With all their hard work, we still have the informal sector having little access to minimum wages and social security. So even this livelihood is more in the realm of exploitation. Now, if recycling has to be a reality on the ground, then we need to strengthen the front end, and that is what NGO Saahas set out to do in 2001. Over the next 12 years, we worked in setting up building blocks for waste management, reduction of packaging waste along with awareness and implementation of waste segregation, collection of segregated waste and composting. In 2013, we looked to put these building blocks together to create a sustainable end-to-end system, which would then result in environmental and social impact. And this was the purpose of our second entity, Saahas Zero Waste, a social enterprise with a business model. So let me use the example of our waste aggregation factory or the material recovery facility, the MRF, to explain how we've been able to realize our purpose. We work with waste generators with whom we have a contract, and the waste generated by the waste generator, who's our customer, is segregated at source. The dry waste is then brought to our MRF for semi-automated intensive sorting and aggregation. 65% of all the waste that comes to our MRF is packaging waste and is low grade, low value waste, but we ensure that we have an end destination for each type of waste which comes into our factory. We have an MIS system that tracks the data, tracks the waste, a qualified professional team who stringently follow processes, and a field team that works with all health and safety precautions. Our field team especially, we make sure that they are paid minimum wages and have social security in line with the labor laws. We are able to meet the cost of operations because we have a service fee which we receive from our customers, the waste generator. And now regulations enable us to have a service fee which even brands pay to us when we manage their plastic waste. Our waste factory has a capacity to manage 10 tons of dry waste per day. We are now looking to have several hundreds of similar MRFs around the country to address and strengthen the front-end management of all dry waste. Likewise, investment of the back end will also have to be stepped up. So we have improvement in recycling technologies and also a market for recycled products. This brings me back to the market and the consumer. And I would like here to put the spotlight on the consumer, who is me and you. And in the 21st century, we ask that consumers now look to transition and become responsible and active citizens. This means that as responsible citizens, we engage closely with the length of the problem and change that problem into solutions as and when required. This would mean enable segregation at source, not just at the household level, but also engage with the community so that the community can be completely compliant to our regulations. This attention and this engagement will then push industry and government to accountability. Ultimately, it is when stakeholders come together to take joint responsibility that we will then move the needle, not just on recycling, but also resource recovery and a circular economy.